you want to talk about the Brasilia card at all? Let's start with
Yeah,
the
I
main
mean, we should
event.
probably, within the first 3 hours of this episode, we should probably talk about actual sports that went down, Luke.
So I'll say this. Let's talk about the main event: Kevin Lee versus Charles Oliveira. Kevin Lee ultimately losing by submission, I think, in the third round. Charles Oliveira looked like he had a shoulder injury the whole time. People are holding our feet to the fire about this, Brian, which is that, both of us had said, Kevin Lee, we had a lot of belief in has championship material. You didn't see a lot of it in this particular fight. Here's what stood out to me, Brian. I wonder about you when I was watching. One thing, as you know, I'm sort of obsessed with the details about fighting. That's why I do dissect it. And, I pick up on certain things, I miss others, right? I do the best that I can. But one thing I've really noticed, and as a boxing fan, I'm wondering, and I suspect you've noticed this as well, a jab doesn't have exactly the same value in MMA as it does in boxing, which isn't to say it doesn't have less or more. It just has a lot of different function. But one thing I've noticed is you just don't see a lot of the jab. You see a little bit of it. You see a lot of crosses, a lot of hooks, a lot of overhands, a lot of combinations with the kicking that doesn't. The jab does not prominently feature in a lot of fighters' repertoires. That's not the case with Volkanovski. It's not the case with Holloway. It's not the case with a lot of good strikers we could point to. I'm not saying it's universal. Here's my point. I thought for sure Kevin Lee was going to work behind the jab to keep Oliveira off of him, and he just didn't have one. There was no real jab that he could drive in someone's face. Before I throw it to you here, think of somebody in boxing right now that's got a really great jab, a jab that blinds you, a jab that stings you, a jab that pops the head back, a jab where you can put other punches behind it. Think about how central that is to defining the way they fight. To me, yes, Kevin Lee had a messed up weight cut, and he looked like he was gassing by the end of the second when he was going for the takedowns. I think that played a role in him ultimately losing. But to me, whatever the issue there was, at this point in his career, how does he not have a jab? Which is that he has one. How does he not have that kind of a jab where he can really manage distance? He had, I think, a 3 or 4 inch reach advantage, Brian Campbell.
Yeah, this is a great point by you. This has been sort of one skill that we've seen certain guys master it and use it. I mean, look, the go-to is George St. Pierre in the Koscheck rematch where he basically broke his eye socket, and Freddie Roach helped him use that as just a crippling weapon the whole fight. You don't see guys commit to it. Is it a lack of proper boxing training coming in? Is it just something that is going to take more years before it becomes a foundational thing? I'm not really sure, but you're right. I mean, look at Gennady Golovkin. Statistically, he has the best jab in boxing. It's a weapon. It sets up his right hand. The fact that look, those two fights against Canelo in which I thought Gennady Golovkin won both of them, very highly controversial. He won both in my eyes because of the jab. It's a foundational thing to keep guys in the area of the ring that you want, and you're right. Lee didn't go to that. Lee just didn't look on at all in this fight.
No.
Now, look, he had moments. I thought he won the first round. Neither of the three judges agreed with me there. I thought he was taking way too many clean shots. The missed weight, Luke, was an obvious sort of red flag. I'm fearful that it's a final red flag because as I sit here right now, I'm still willing to call him future UFC champion Kevin Lee at 27 years old. You're crazy, BC. Yeah, I'm crazy. There's some guys that just have 9 lives. Zab Judah in boxing, when he was 37, I thought he could still make a run. We all have our blind spots here. Kevin Lee could still turn this around if he had won this fight, right? That weight loss, even Charles Oliveira said it afterwards, the bad weight cut, he's like, look, I'm not going to hold this against Kevin Lee. These are unprecedented circumstances we're going through. Kevin Lee traveled to Brazil. There's no crowd. Look, I thought the lack of the crowd would help him. He had moments where he was in that fight landing big shots. He took too many clean shots, in my opinion. In return, looked a little bit flat, then got caught in the submission. Yeah, there's the hold. Did he tap afterwards? Look, he tapped. The fight's over.
He
At
tapped.
that point, yeah, look, it's not worth talking about at that point. It happened. The fight's over. I got fears, Luke. I got fears for this guy. There's too much talent there not to put it together. And it's like, yes, he has a history of bad weight cuts, which has blown up his lightweight potential. I was shocked when he came back into the Gillespie fight. I was shocked when he sent him to hell the way he did to sort of reappear in our minds as a future lightweight contender. Luke, can he reimagine himself, before we get into Oliveira, at welterweight? In the same way maybe like a Michael Chiesa just did and shows you, oh, wow, maybe he should have been here all along. Because right now, I don't think of Kevin Lee as a potential elite welterweight, but maybe it could surprise us with the explosion, with the ability. Or do you think there's still just foundational holes in his defense and his mindset that's preventing him from taking all that's inside of him and throwing it against the canvas there, Luke, and just becoming who he's supposed to be, world
Yeah, I
champion.
mean, when he's on, and when he's not, he's really not. He shoots hot and cold. And so for me, the reasons behind that are one, like on the striking department, just not having a jab when you have such a long reach. Obviously, you're drained by the weight cut. Maybe that played a role in it. But the other part to me, it's like he wasn't moving his feet a whole lot. And that's why he was getting hit by Oliveira, because Oliveira was the guy. I wasn't saying it wasn't standing in front of him, but it wasn't like using evasive movement to really get out of the way, the way like kind of Adesanya does, And not everyone could be style bender, I understand, but just sort of borrowing some of the insights. There's just not that there, and it's like There's no athletic reason why that can't be the case. You're training with Faraz Zahabi. There's no technical reason why it can't be the case. There has to be something else going on. I think those weight cuts are killing him. I think he's a tweener. I think the lack of 165 is going to kill or badly affect Kevin Lee's career, because he said it might be a couple of years where we see him again. Now, how true that is, we'll see. A lot of fighters say a lot of negative things when they lose, and I'm
But
sure
that's
this has been
alarming,
devastating
Luke.
for him.
That's an alarm going off in my head when I hear a guy in his prime, yes, with alternating wins and losses, to be like, this one stung so bad that I may have to go away for a while. That's a big
Yeah,
issue.
yeah. So, but this is my point. It's like if it was 155, 165, 175, 185, 205. If we had that, I honestly believe, and I could be wrong about this. Maybe we're just Kevin Lee homers and we just can't get out of our own way. But to me, the flashes of brilliance are not an accident, nor are the flashes of just abject failure. Neither are an accident. But to me, I attribute them to probably some technical growth he has to go through, no matter if it was the right weight class or not. But I just believe the lack of 165 is going to hurt his career very badly. He's a tweener. He's a tweener. He's the guy who is perfect for 165, terrible for 155, and 170. It's just not quite right either, given who else is up there. So those are the two issues for me. Now, you mentioned Oliveira. I'll go right back to you. He's a finisher, bro. He's a born finisher. And you know what? Even with the injury, I thought he looked pretty good on the feet.
He looked great on the feet. I mean, the technique was there. Luke, he always had the flashy submissions. He's got the most submissions in UFC history. He's second in most finishes overall. Those are staggering statistics. Those aren't as staggering in the first 5-10 years of his career when he's alternating wins and losses so consistently. The fact now that he uses his striking to set up the submissions outside of his shitty haircut. Is it too late in the night? Can I say it too late in the morning? Can I say that out loud, Luke? Outside of that
fine.
crappy haircut, he's evolving into an awesome fighter. I do believe that there's a bit of fool's gold buried within the 7-fight win streak. There's a reason why he hadn't been in the top 10 until now, that we aren't really raising the Charles Oliveira flag high, right? Like, Nick Lentz is fine, but there's a lot of Nick Lentzes on that streak for him. This is a wake-up call against a Kevin Lee who, yes, we're saying didn't look like the best version of him, but again, had moments in there in which he landed some big shots against Oliveira. His transition from striking to ground game, his confidence even more, Luke. Sometimes a man just has to grow up and sort of figure this business and this sport out. He's at a scary point where he's not afraid of anybody, and he's unique enough with the flashy submission style, yet well-rounded enough, Luke, that I don't see major flaws there. I'm not saying in this historically deep lightweight division that he deserves or that he will end up in the title picture in 1 to 2 more fights. But you're going to have a problem keeping him out of that title picture if he keeps getting wins like this.
Yeah, and what he showed me is, remember the way we had framed it going into the fight, which was we're going to see which guy, not their ceiling, although you'll see some great things from them, we're going to see their floor. I think that Oliveira is the one that of the two that showed us he's really working on the problems he's had in his career. I still think, he kind of is who he is to the point you're raising, but I think this is going to be the interesting spot for him. Now he'll probably jump into the top 10 rankings at lightweight, which is very hard to do, and that's impressive, adding more to that depth. I don't think he'll ever be the best lightweight, but I'll say this. If the best lightweight isn't on their P's and Q's on the right day, he will snatch that fucking neck of yours fast. He will snatch a back take quick. He will make sure that if you're better than him and you can prove it, you probably will. If you're better than him and you're slipping, he will win. And that always is going to make him, to me, if not the most dominant threat, it's going to make him an interesting threat every time you see him on the fight card.
Luke, remember in college in your extended friend circle? I mean, you're a frat guy, which is honestly disappointing for me, Luke. I'm a non-organizational fella, all right? I don't believe in these organized white gangs that you rolled in playing
It's not the
quarters with your
KKK
polo
guy.
shirts
By the way, they
on.
weren't all white.
All right, well, yeah, whatever. There was always like a skinny guy in that group who just banged. He could get chicks, and you're like, not really that good looking, doesn't really have a demonstrable game, but he's a finisher, bro. I mean, he finishes. This guy finishes. I'd like to know more about his personal life to see if he can carry that spirit and flair outside of it, to see if the chicks dig the platinum gray, Luke. I mean, you're kind of pulling that off not on purpose. It's working out for you. We'll see what happens for your future, Luke.
That takes us to the co-main event very quickly. Gilbert Burns
Oh, no. Big no sell, Luke. Big no sell on the gray hair joke. All
becoming, I
right.
think, the second person to TKO Demian Maia inside the distance, winning matter-of-factly, dropping him. Demian Maia said he thought he was fine, but the referee disagreed. Demian Maia didn't really protest too much. Gilbert Burns, we knew if it was jiu-jitsu for jiu-jitsu, maybe Demian Maia's a little bit better, but Gilbert Burns is a world champion black belt several times over himself, hardly some slouch, and has good wrestling and dynamic athlete and has really worked on his hands. He, to me, is a pretty interesting threat at 170. A title picture threat? I don't really know. I don't think that's quite right, but like, what about Jorge Masvidal versus Gilbert Burns? Maybe Jorge Masvidal is better. I'm not saying that he's not. But can I consider that a runaway fight for Jorge Masvidal? No, I don't actually think that I can. So, and then the jiu-jitsu prowess against a guy like Tyron Woodley or Leon Edwards or Colby Covington or Kamaru Usman. I mean, again, maybe you think those guys beat him, but he's competitive everywhere and has an ace in the hole better than all of those guys in terms of the jiu-jitsu mat. He is a maturing, interesting talent at 170 pounds.
Yeah, I mean, you see a guy that look, we framed this fight on our various own platforms when we previewed it as sort of a potential passing of the guard from one great jiu-jitsu master to a new one, or not a new one, but the guy of the moment in Brazil. And yet he comes out there and knocks him out with a perfect left hook. And by the way, celebrated it a bit too early. That was almost Leon Lett style there. Don Beebe not in the house to make him pay. Got on there quick with those hammer fists. He's an interesting out. I feel like, Luke, I need to see one more in this division, one more big step up before I'm a full-time Gilbert Burns believer, but this was certainly a wake-up call. That name, give me a Stephen Thompson-like opponent for him. If you can do it on that
Ooh.
level, now you're at a 4-fight win streak, you're going to the next level, then you become a title contender in my mind.
That's a great call. You're right. There's probably a little bit more proving ground about his ultimate versatility, right? Because on paper he's versatile, but when the rubber meets the road, what does that mean exactly? I like that. I think that's a fair point. Still, the way in which he has been performing since going to 170 pounds, because he was killing himself to get to 155 for a time as well. Remember going against Dan Hooker, he's looked great and has looked ready to go, and I've been really impressed by what he has shown. And by the way, really worked on his English, Brian. He's a good interview as well. Anyone else on that card you want to shout out?
I mean, I could shout down Johnny Walker, right?
Yeah, he has not looked great, huh?
I mean, look, this was a big moment to sort of put the train back on the track, show us a little less flash and a lot more substance. And Luke, look, he had moments in this fight that he just couldn't capitalize on. I mean, it's a nice little asterisk that this is the first time Nikita Krylov goes the distance in a fight and wins by decision. But I felt I was just waiting during moments of that fight for Johnny Walker to, including when he had full mount, to sort of take over and make that fight happen for him. And we're not in panic mode yet. It's 2 losses in a row, and it surely ain't good, especially when 2 fights ago we're like, should we throw him to the Lions? Should we put him in there with John Jones? I'm not going to panic yet, and you know that I like to clown on his clowningness overall. He's a more serious version of Michel Pineda, if you ask me. But Luke, at what point is he just a attraction? 3 losses in a row? I mean, he's got a new camp, new team, hopefully getting a little bit more serious. Is there a way to shave down some of that excess, yet still keep that explosive, dynamic, crazy man striker who's going to do weird things and come in there with weird hair without being exposed by solid, hard-ass wrestlers every time he steps up?
Yeah, I mean, here's his problem. Not every fighter is exactly this way, but he appears to be one of these fighters who really lives and dies on his own level of confidence. And you lose to Corey Anderson, okay, it didn't go great. He made some changes, went to TriStar as well. And then this time you had a lengthier fight, because remember the Corey Anderson fight was short. This fight went, let's see, what was the full length here? It was Johnny Walker. I mean, it went to a decision, right? And he won a round anyway. But to get through 15 minutes and ultimately against a guy who, Nikita Krylov, who used to be a bit of a punchline, but has certainly improved a lot since then, since his return to the UFC, but is not exactly like an elite. He's not even a big version for that weight class, much less a super elite one. And then to look as deficient overall, you partly think, yes, he got by with those quick stoppages early by a little bit of athletic luck. But also, you have to wonder, while he's working on his game, even if they give him lesser competition, to what extent have these two losses impacted his ability to sort of be in the moment, feel, rhythm, the whole 9 yards? Because he really seems to thrive off of that. You take that away, he's got a bit of a problem. Let me say one last thing, if I can, on this card. Demian Maia saying his next fight is probably his last. He either wants Diego Sanchez or Donald Cerrone. I'm going to vote in favor of Donald Cerrone because Donald Cerrone has been very good on the ground. If he has enough time off from the Conor fight, so like, rehab, we went over it. He fought 5 different elite lightweights in a single calendar, less than a single calendar year, Donald Cerrone did. But if he wants to go back to 170, it's not hard on him, and he can do it. I actually think it's an interesting fight on the ground. I think Donald's got superb wrestling, and of course on the feet he's got the advantage against Diego Sanchez. I'm not saying that's necessarily the best or the worst fight. Diego's scrappy on the ground. If you saw what he did at ADCC against Marcelo Garcia, you'd be impressed. But that was that version of Diego Sanchez. The one we have now under his new tutelage, I just don't know what we're going to get the next time he comes out. So I'm going to vote Donald Cerrone. What do you say?
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. I don't want Diego Sanchez anymore. I don't want anything to do with it. So yeah, let's go Donald Cerrone on that. I don't want you to end this card without me bringing up the women's strawweight fight of the moment on there. I know we're supposed to say Hebos, but Amanda Ribas again looked fantastic, Luke, in taking that decision from Randa Marcos. I'm not going to say short term, but medium term title contender.
Yeah, dude, 3:30:25s. She's athletic. She speaks English. She can strike. She can wrestle. She's got good jiu-jitsu. She's the real deal Holyfield. Now, how far will she go with it? Your guess is as good as mine in a division that stacked. But you're right, dude. Again,
Luke,
women's
bring
strawweight.
It in close here. Bring it in close. Sneaky hot too, Luke.
Okay, that's all you being super unprofessional. All right, let's do this.